Are you not afraid about being blackballed again? These are some power people.
What do you mean again? These people are not powerful. Satan can't create anything. That includes blessings for his people.
When Katt Williams looked directly into his front-facing camera on Instagram Live and uttered 5 terrifying words, "I'll be dead next year," the chat completely froze. This wasn't the unbothered, sharp-witted comic who broke the internet on Club Shay Shay. This was a man who looked genuinely exhausted, cornered, and deeply afraid. For years, Katt has claimed he plays a dangerous game with Hollywood's elite, constantly walking a thin line between truth teller and target. But this latest live stream felt different. It didn't feel like hype. It felt like a countdown. Did Katt finally expose the one secret he wasn't supposed to touch? Or is there something much more personal happening behind closed doors? In this video, we aren't just looking at that disturbing 15-second clip. We are digging into the terrifying timeline leading up to that stream, the hidden messages the internet completely missed, and the powerful entities Katt claims are closing in on him. Because to understand why Katt thinks he's running out of time, we have to go back to how this war actually started. The kid the system tried to swallow.
In 15 years in Hollywood, no one in Hollywood has a memory of going to a sold-out Kevin Hart show, there being a line for him ever getting a standing ovation at any comedy club. He already had his deals when he got here. Have we heard of a comedian that came to LA and in his first year in LA, he had his own sitcom on network television and had his own movie called Soul Plane that he was leading? No, we've never heard of that before that person or since that person. What do you think a plant is?
When Katt Williams sat down on Club Shay Shay and exposed what he called the satanic gatekeepers of Hollywood, naming names, calling out backroom deals, and alleging that top comedians wore dresses to advance their careers, the world thought he had finally lost his mind. But Katt wasn't crazy. He was doing what he has always done, refusing to bow to a system he doesn't respect.
Do you know what the #1 job of somebody that sold their soul in Hollywood is?
What?
It's to act like it didn't happen. They all do the same job.
While other celebrities play the game, sign the non-disclosure agreements, and smile for the cameras, Katt has spent his entire career standing his ground, absolutely unbothered by the consequences. He is a man who cannot be bought because he learned a long time ago how to survive without anyone's help. To understand why Katt Williams saying, "I'll be dead next year," carries the weight that it does, you have to understand where this man came from. He grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. His parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, and there came a point where the state of Florida decided the home he was in was no longer suitable for a child. He was removed into foster care and group homes. He was placed in a system that is designed to produce more dysfunction than it resolves. He was 13 years old when he legally emancipated himself. That means at an age when most kids are arguing with their parents about curfews, Katt Williams went to a court and said, in effect, "I am responsible for myself now." The court agreed. What does a 13-year-old emancipated child do to survive? In Katt's case, he sold fish. He had figured out that restaurants in his area needed a reliable supplier for certain kinds of seafood, and he inserted himself into that supply chain and made enough money to live on. He needed money. He found a way to make money. He did not need a parent or a guidance counselor to tell him how. That level of self-reliance, built at 13 out of pure necessity, does not leave a person. It wires something into you. He found comedy almost by accident doing sets at local clubs around Cincinnati and Dayton, getting paid almost nothing, learning by doing. What separated him from the very beginning was that his comedy was doing 2 things at once. The jokes were there, they were real, they were funny, but underneath them was a consistent argument about power. Who has it? Who takes it? How it operates? How ordinary people get chewed up by systems that are working exactly as intended, just against them, rather than for them. He was doing this in the mid to late 1990s on stages that held maybe 50 people. By the time the wider entertainment world started paying attention to him, he already had a fully formed perspective on the industry he was about to enter. He had no illusions. He went in with open eyes. And that, in retrospect, may be precisely why what came next happened the way it did. His professional breakthrough came through a combination of small television roles and increasingly high-profile stand-up work. He appeared on Wild 'N Out with Nick Cannon, which gave him a mainstream television platform and introduced him to audiences who had never seen him perform live.
Out though late at night? Yes. Right? Yes. Now, brother, we talking about love. Love. Love is the engine that drives the train forward, backwards, side to side, round and round love does go. You understand me? I got this, brother.
He had a role in Friday After Next in 2002. He was in Norbit in 2007 alongside Eddie Murphy, which brought him into the orbit of one of the biggest names in the comedy business. But the thing that really established Katt Williams as a singular force was his 2006 HBO special, The Pimp Chronicles Part 1. If you have seen this special, you already know what we are talking about. If you haven't, the thing that strikes you immediately is the control. He commands a stage the way very few people can. There's a worldview underneath all of it. He won a Grammy Award for Best Comedy Album on the strength of that special's audio release. A Grammy for stand-up comedy. That is how good he was. By 2008, he was arguably at the top of the live comedy world in terms of the kind of audiences he was drawing and the revenue he was generating. His It's Pimpin' Pimpin' tour grossed over $30 million. His face was on billboards. His material was being quoted by people who had never even been to a comedy club in their lives. For a man who was selling fish out of the back of a car at 13 years old, this was an extraordinary thing to have built. And then the arrests started.
You know, allegedly found some guns and...
Yeah, they always find guns. I never leave without
my girlfriend.
I'm on the middle of an interview, sir.
Sorry about it. They found guns and drugs now. Is
Drugs?
That's what it was reported.
Sir, you can look at my paperwork. There was no drugs. Weed is not a drug.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that's safe for kids to be around guns and stuff like that? I mean, I'm just curious.
How do you keep this kid safe without guns? They were in a lockbox that the police broke.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm saying, if the police come in and raid my place and break into my gun boxes, you're gonna find guns. But these aren't, well, I'm not in a gang. What difference does it make?
Now, you were actually stopped for this and let go because you have a license for it,
No,
right?
this is their 9th time coming to my house. The problem was this time they came to my office and took my kids from an office. Not from my house, from an office. So now when I can't have my kids at my office,
That's an issue.
I must be
Yeah,
the most terrible black dude. Because here's the whole thing. You gonna charge me with child endangerment? After I adopted 7 children and had them for 14 years in this state? Really? You coming after my kids now? Because it was already a witch hunt. Now you want my babies? Yikes.
Over the following decade, Katt Williams accumulated a rap sheet that the tabloids treated as evidence of personal instability, and the people who followed him closely treated as something more suspicious. The charges ran the spectrum: altercations, property damage, weapons-related incidents. Some of it was clearly real and charges were filed, but the frequency was strange, and so was the timing. It seemed like every time Katt Williams was gaining serious momentum, a new special high-profile project or a moment where mainstream America was about to reconsider whether it had been too quick to dismiss him, something would happen that yanked the spotlight off his work and onto a police report. He talked about this publicly, on multiple occasions in multiple contexts, over many years. He said the industry was targeting him. He said there were people who needed him discredited because of what he was saying in his materials and interviews. He said that the stories that kept getting amplified about him were being done by design, and that the machinery of celebrity gossip can be pointed at a person as a weapon. And he believed it was being pointed at him. People laughed at that. They wrote it off. The most generous interpretation the mainstream offered was that this was a man in genuine personal crisis, constructing a narrative to explain away his own self-destructive behavior. The less generous interpretation was that he was simply a disturbed person saying disturbed things. Nobody seriously investigated the claim. Nobody pulled the receipts. Nobody looked at the pattern and asked whether there was something to it. That would come later, much later, when everyone was forced to pay attention. There is a version of Katt Williams' personal life story that the tabloids ran for years, and there is the more complicated version. The most complicated version is the one we will present today. He has been married twice. His first marriage, to Quadira Locus, ended in divorce. He later married Vanessa Fraction, and that marriage also ended. He has 8 children, a combination of biological children and children he adopted or took in from various circumstances, which, given his own history in foster care, is a choice that makes a certain kind of emotional sense, even if it made his personal life considerably more chaotic. The relationship that drew the most public attention, and that the media ran with in the most sensationalistic possible way, was his involvement with a woman named Hazel Flores. Their relationship was volatile by any honest account. There were incidents, legal filings, and photographic evidence. The worst part is that every single piece of this played out very publicly, in a gossip media environment was not interested in context or nuance. What Katt has said about his personal life, in his more reflective moments, is this. He has never pretended to be someone whose life is organized or stable in the conventional sense. He grew up without stability. He has never fully known how to construct it. He knows how to work, how to perform, and how to survive. The domestic part that looks clean and functional from the outside is the part he has struggled with. But here's what matters for this story. The chaos of his personal life was very useful to certain people. Every time he said something about the entertainment industry that was uncomfortable, named names or described practices that powerful people preferred to keep private, a story about his personal life would surface or resurface. The cycle was remarkably consistent. Say something true and threatening. Have your personal life become the story instead. The public talks about the personal life and then the original statement gets drowned out. He eventually called this out explicitly. He said in a 2023 interview that got some traction before it was largely ignored. Every time I say something they don't want me saying, something about my personal life ends up in the news the next day. He was specific enough about the timing that it was worth taking seriously. Most people did not take it seriously, but that was about to change. The strategic distractions were finally about to fail when Katt decided to pull back the curtain on a massive scale, bringing the receipts straight to the public. The industry targeted him and he has the receipts.
Cedric did the same thing. Cedric told you when you asked him, did you steal Katt Williams' joke? Yeah. He said, it don't line up. How it don't line up that I did it on TV in 2018? You came to see me at the Comedy Store do it in 2019 and then did it on the Kings of Comedy. Like, what doesn't line up? This is a televised joke that Mark Curry helped me punch up and get to the level that it was.
When Katt Williams sat down with Shannon Sharpe on Club Shay Shay in January 2024 for an explosive 3-hour interview that became one of the most discussed pieces of content produced that entire year, he dropped bombshells about the inner workings of the entertainment industry by naming Diddy, Cedric the Entertainer, Steve Harvey, and Kevin Hart. If you have seen this interview, you already understand why it became one of the most discussed pieces of content produced that entire year. If you haven't, here is what happened. Katt Williams sat across from Shannon Sharpe and spent 3 hours making claims about people in the entertainment industry. He named Diddy, Cedric the Entertainer, Steve Harvey, and Kevin Hart.
Cedric did the same thing. Cedric told you when you asked him, did you steal Katt Williams' joke? Yeah. He said, it don't line up. How it don't line up that I did it on TV in 2018? You came to see me at the Comedy Store do it in 2019 and then did it on the Kings of Comedy. Like, what doesn't line up? This is a televised joke that Mark Curry helped me punch up and get to the level that it was.
He made claims about how careers in the industry are actually managed, about what certain people have done to get where they are. He also made claims about the specific practices and arrangements that the public image machine is designed to obscure. He was calm. That's what got people. He was not ranting or raving. Rather, he was organized. The response from the people he named was immediate and aggressive. Kevin Hart, in particular, went hard against him publicly, dismissing the claims, attacking Katt's credibility, leaning on the narrative of personal instability that had been building around Katt for a decade. It was a coordinated-looking response. Whether or not it was actually coordinated is a question we will leave open, but the truth is that it appeared to be. And then, one by one, things Katt had said started getting confirmed. Diddy. The federal indictment that came down in September 2024 on charges of trafficking and racketeering, with allegations about exactly the kind of behavior at exactly the kind of private events that Katt Williams had been describing for years, was the one that broke the dam. Because once that happened, people went back to the Club Shay Shay interview. And then they went back further to older interviews, to things Katt had said 5 years ago and 10 years ago that had been dismissed as the ravings of an unstable man. and what they found was a consistent account that kept getting confirmed rather than contradicted. The cultural rehabilitation of Katt Williams' reputation happened fast after that. People who had spent years using his arrest record to dismiss him were suddenly very quiet. The conversation shifted. The question went from, "What is wrong with this man?" to, "What did this man know, and who spent all those years trying to make sure people wouldn't listen to him?" He did an interview in the wake of the Diddy situation where he addressed this directly. He said he had been telling the truth for 20 years. He said the reason he had been targeted was precisely because he was telling the truth. He said the people who had spent years trying to destroy his credibility had done so because credibility was the only weapon he had, and they knew it. And then, this is where everything takes a darker turn. He got on Instagram Live. And he said something that hit differently than anything he had said before. Before we get to exactly what Katt said on that Instagram Live, let's spend a moment on context. Because that context is everything. There's a pattern that people who follow the entertainment industry's darker side have been tracking for a long time. Artists who become inconvenient, who know things, say things, have relationships and knowledge that powerful people would prefer to stay private, have a way of suddenly developing very public instability narratives right before something bad happens to them. Prince went on television in 1996 and appeared with the word slave written on his face and talked openly about the ownership structure the music industry uses to control artists. He talked about how labels hold masters, how artists are kept dependent through debt and advanced structures, how the system is designed to ensure that the person creating the work almost never actually owns it. He said, explicitly, that as long as an artist is signed to a contract, they will always take a minority share of what their work generates. He was widely dismissed as eccentric at best and delusional at worst. He died of a fentanyl overdose in 2016, under circumstances that have never fully resolved to everyone's satisfaction.
When I talked about Michael Jackson, when I talked about R. Kelly, they canceled me for these things because why would you talk about another black dude? Race is not where the line is drawn. It's God's side and the other side.
Michael Jackson spent the last years of his life in legal and financial chaos, largely orchestrated by people he had trusted. He had publicly accused Tommy Mottola of Sony of being a racist and devil who was sabotaging his career. He spoke about the systemic exploitation of black artists by the music industry. He was in the middle of a complex legal and financial fight over his catalog worth billions when he died of a propofol overdose administered by a personal physician who was subsequently convicted of involuntary manslaughter, DMX. A man whose relationship with drugs was real and documented, but whose death at 50 years old, from a drug overdose that happened while his catalog was being actively repositioned in streaming, generated the same uncomfortable questions that keep following these cases. Whitney Houston, Bobby Christina, Amy Winehouse. The pattern is not that all of these deaths are necessarily the result of the same thing. The pattern is, artist becomes publicly inconvenient or financially valuable. Artist develops or is portrayed as developing a public crisis. Artist dies. Catalog surges. Questions get raised briefly. Questions get dismissed. The industry moves on. Katt Williams knows this pattern. He has discussed it. He referenced it in various interviews in the years before his Club Shay Shay moment. He said explicitly that he expected to be next and said there were people who would be better off with him gone. He said these things for years, and people treated it as evidence of paranoia. Then Diddy happened, and suddenly Katt Williams's paranoia started looking more like informed awareness. Let's talk specifically about what Katt Williams has said and who he has said it about, because the specifics matter if you want to understand why the Instagram Live landed the way it did. He has said publicly that Kevin Hart's rise in the comedy world was not entirely organic. He has made claims about favors extended and arrangements made that the clean narrative of Kevin Hart as self-made underdog does not account for. Kevin Hart has become one of the highest-paid entertainers on the planet over the past decade. He headlined the Super Bowl halftime show pre-game. He has been in over 40 films. He has a production company, a media company, a fitness company, and has done all of this while his stand-up work, from a purely craft standpoint, has been assessed by critics and comedy professionals as competent but far from the level of originality that would typically justify that scale of industry investment. Katt's argument made across multiple interviews and stand-up sets is that the industry does not invest at that level based on merit alone. That there are relationships involved, that there are agreements, that Kevin Hart's explosion into a multimedia empire tracks more closely with his relationships to certain industry power brokers than with his talent as a comedian. These are serious claims. Kevin Hart has denied them furiously. But the question of what they have in common, who they have in common, has never been fully answered. He has made similar observations about Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, and others in the comedy and entertainment space who have accumulated industry power at rates that Katt considers suspicious. He frames it as a question about who gets the backing and who doesn't, and what determines the difference. His answer is not flattering to the people involved. These claims put real targets on him from real people who have real money and real connections. This is worth sitting with. Kevin Hart alone has enough industry relationships to make Katt Williams' professional life extremely difficult. Steve Harvey has a media empire. These are not minor figures whose disapproval can be safely ignored. When Katt Williams said these things on Club Shay Shay, he was burning bridges with people who had the resources to respond in ways that went beyond a nasty interview. He knew this going into that interview. Shannon Sharpe reportedly told him he was going to make powerful enemies. Katt reportedly said he already had powerful enemies, and that he had been living with those enemies for 20 years, but they hadn't managed to fully take him down yet. But something shifted after that interview. The tone of what Katt Williams said in public started to change. The energy underneath his words changed. He started saying things that sounded less like a man who had finally been vindicated and more like a man who was genuinely afraid. And then came the Instagram Live that nobody was ready for. The night he looked into the camera and said it out loud. The Instagram Live happened without announcement. There was no scheduled time or promotional lead-up. It was just Katt Williams on his phone going live in the middle of the night with something he needed to say. The audience that joined was not expecting what they got. He was emotional in a way that his public persona, which runs toward defiance and bravado, rarely shows. The people who follow him and have seen him perform for years recognized immediately that this was different. He was sitting somewhere, clearly alone, talking directly to his phone like a man who needed to be heard by somebody. And then he said it. He said he expected to be dead within the year. He did not frame it as suicidal ideation. He framed it as a prediction based on the reality of his situation. He said the people he had named and exposed had the motive, means, and access to make it happen. He said he was putting it on record publicly because he believed that if something happened to him, the first thing the people responsible would do is ensure it looked like an accident or an overdose. He said he wanted the public to know, before anything happened, that he did not intend to die. That if he ended up dead, it was not his choice. He talked about the weight of having said what he'd said on Club Shay Shay and in subsequent interviews. He said he had known, going into that interview, that there was a cost attached. He had decided the cost was worth it. But sitting there, on that Instagram Live, it was clear the cost was hitting him in a way he hadn't fully anticipated. The calls, messages, and feeling of being watched. These disturbing things were some of the things that had changed in his daily life since January 2002. He mentioned people around him behaving differently and that he was feeling like his movements were being tracked. He mentioned the death of people he knew and respected people that were entertainers, had been in the same industry and knew the same things he knew. He explained that the frequency of those losses had started to feel less like coincidences and more like patterns. He cried at one point. That is the detail that went around social media the fastest, and that, for people who have followed Katt Williams for any length of time, was the most alarming. This is a man who has stared down crowds of thousands and once had an altercation during a live performance and came back out to finish the set. Katt had built an entire public persona around the idea that nothing rattles him. Seeing him cry, alone, on a phone camera, telling his audience he expected to be dead in a year, was a gut punch. The comment section during the live was, by accounts of people who were watching in real time, overwhelmingly expressions of fear and love. People telling him to stay safe and saying they believed him. A few skeptics saying this was a bit, a stunt, a piece of theater designed to generate engagement. But the dominant response was alarm. Katt Williams has been right about too many specific things too many times to be dismissed as paranoid. That is just a fact at this point. The Diddy situation alone closes that debate. But beyond the specific predictions that got confirmed, there is a broader pattern in how the entertainment industry responds to people who say true and inconvenient things. The pattern is, first ignore them. If that does work, discredit them. And if that doesn't work, wait for them to self-destruct, and if possible, help them get. According to celebrities like Michael Jackson that this had happened to, the help comes in many forms. It can be professional doors close, projects dry up, bookings stop happening, and it can also be personal relationships get strained, people around the target become sources of conflict, the infrastructure of someone's daily life gets quietly destabilized, and sometimes in the cases that generate the most uncomfortable questions afterward, it comes in the form of an accident or an overdose that happens to occur at a particularly convenient moment. Katt Williams has made it to 2024, 2025 still standing, which is genuinely remarkable given everything that's been thrown at him. The arrest record that was supposed to destroy him didn't destroy him permanently. The tabloid campaigns that were supposed to define him didn't stick the way they were designed to. The industry's attempt to paint him as a madman backfired spectacularly when the world found out he had been telling the truth. But here's the thing about being right in public when powerful people want you to be wrong. Being right doesn't make you safe. In some ways, being right makes you less safe. Because now the record exists, the credibility is established, and when he says the next thing, people listen. And that is exactly the situation that, historically, in the cases of certain other artists we could name, has preceded the worst outcomes. He knows this. That is what the Instagram Live was. A man who has studied the pattern, watched what happened to people who got to the same position he is now in. Is this a man in a genuine mental health crisis projecting threats that don't exist? Or it is a man who knows exactly how this industry operates and has proven that knowledge to be accurate on multiple occasions, making a very calculated public statement about his own safety while he still has the platform to make it? Given the past 18 months, the Diddy situation, and everything that has been confirmed rather than denied, it's easy to find this all a credible threat rather than an unstable man looking for attention. He also said something else on that live that has gotten less attention than the "I'll be dead" line, but that might be even more important. He said the people who want him gone are scared of what he has not yet said, insinuating that what he has held back is more incriminating than what he has already said. He said there are things he knows that he has deliberately kept off camera, off record, out of published interviews, precisely because those things represent a level of danger he has been careful to manage. He said once those things come out, and he suggests they will come out, one way or another certain people's entire positions in the industry become untenable. That is the actual threat underneath the threat. It is the reason the Instagram Live was what it was. He is a man who told the truth once and is now facing blowback, even though it is just a fraction of what he knows. He is already dealing with so much pressure that it has pushed him to tears on a live phone camera in the middle of the night. What happens when he tells the rest? So the question now is this: do you believe K. Williams' life really is in danger? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.